Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving straight into exactly how China's 2026 outbound investment rules actively weaponize parent company guarantees. Have you ever closed a multi-billion-dollar international project finance deal, secured what looked like an ironclad parent company guarantee or keep-well deed from a massive Chinese conglomerate and thought, great, our downside risk is completely covered? Well, you might want to rethink that, because the sweeping 2026 outbound investment rules coming out of China are about to fundamentally rewrite the rules of cross-border risk.
Okay, let's map out our agenda for today. We'll start with 1, the jurisdictional trap, then 2, a multi-billion-dollar collapse, 3, the 2026 paradigm shift, 4, cross-border collision risks, 5, industry-specific vulnerabilities, and finally, 6, rebuilding sponsor support.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the jurisdictional trap, the illusion of the corporate shield.
I really want you to ask yourself this provocative question. Because in the high-stakes arena of global infrastructure, seasoned foreign investors and international syndicates fall into this trap all the time. They just naturally assume that because a guarantee or a keep-well deed doesn't involve an immediate, day-one cross-border transfer of actual cash, it safely bypasses the whole labyrinth of Chinese outbound investment regulations. They rely heavily on standard English law financing agreements and offshore corporate shields to keep them safe. But as we'll see, that foundation is becoming dangerously obsolete.
Here is the harsh reality. Winning does not equal recovery. You could execute a brilliant legal strategy, secure a totally favorable English court judgment against an offshore special purpose vehicle, and it means absolutely nothing if Chinese administrative law blocks the actual cash recovery from the parent company. The ultimate fate of your capital is increasingly dictated not by the commercial success of your project, but by the extraterritorial reach of Chinese regulatory enforcement.
So let's look at Section 2, a multi-billion-dollar collapse, the anatomy of a disaster.
Picture this real-world scenario. Imagine a massive critical minerals project in Africa. To make it bankable, the offshore SPV secures a huge syndicated loan. On day 1, the international lenders demand a robust sponsor support system. By month 6, the Chinese parent company signs a standard parent company guarantee. Now, historically, because no equity cash was flowing out of China right then, the parent simply skipped the formal outbound direct investment, or ODI, approvals. And honestly, they aren't alone. Literally billions of dollars in current offshore projects were structured this exact same way. But fast forward to year 1. A Chinese national security review halts the project due to sensitive technology or geopolitical friction. The project doesn't fail because of a bad market or flawed engineering. It fails because the Chinese parent is legally paralyzed by its home country.
And right there is the crisis point. When the international syndicate inevitably accelerates the loan and demands payment under the guarantee, offshore English contract law collides head-on with onshore Chinese regulatory enforcement. The parent company is completely trapped in the middle of 2 conflicting legal systems, resulting in a lethal paralysis.
Moving to Section 3, the 2026 paradigm shift, from cash outflow to risk export. Pay very close attention to this definition, because Article 2 fundamentally rewrites the legal DNA of international project finance. It formally expands the definition of outbound investment to explicitly capture the act of providing financing or guarantees. So, those contingent financial instruments you always thought were safe, they are now heavily regulated targets, falling under a rigid, unified State Council administrative framework.
To understand why this is happening, you have to look at how Beijing's regulatory mindset has aggressively shifted. For decades, the focus was purely on capital outflow control, basically just watching the cash leave the country. But post-2026, it is all about risk export regulation. The Chinese government recognized that when a parent company issues an offshore guarantee, it is effectively using its domestic balance sheet to unconditionally underwrite highly volatile global risks. They are stepping in to stop offshore defaults from forcing a rigid, massive outflow of domestic core assets.
Because of this, traditional credit enhancements are completely transformed. Parent company guarantees and completion guarantees now carry a critical regulatory penetration risk rating. And what about keep-well agreements, which have historically been the market's favorite loophole for avoiding strict foreign exchange rules? Keep in mind, there are currently tens of billions of dollars globally backed by keep-wells. Well, they now carry a high risk rating. Every single one of these tools will now face penetrating, full lifecycle administrative scrutiny from China.
Section 4, cross-border collision risks, caught in the middle.
Think about how these friction points create an absolute dual compliance nightmare. Let's say your project violates a new Chinese export control. The Chinese regulator issues a strict administrative order to halt investment and dispose of assets. The parent company must obey, or they face massive fines, up to 1% of the total investment amount, and even criminal liability. But meanwhile, over in London, under LMA standard English law, that forced asset disposal triggers a mandatory prepayment event. The international lenders demand their money immediately. This dynamic rips right through the SVP corporate shield, directly exposing the Chinese parent company's core domestic assets to offshore defaults and international lawsuits. It's an impossible catch-22.
Next up, Section 5, Industry-Specific Vulnerabilities, where the traps are hidden. It's fascinating because each industry faces its own unique jurisdictional trap here. For renewables like wind and solar, the risk rating is critical. Why? Because the advanced technology required often triggers strict export control limits. So if a solar farm is stalled because technology transfer is blocked by Beijing, the completion guarantee is instantly called. For energy storage, severe fire risks can trigger safety and environmental administrative bans from China, instantly cutting off vital liquidity support. And for mining, the biggest threat is national security reviews. If a parent company tries to restructure a failing mining asset and Beijing blocks the sale for security reasons, it forces a massive, completely unresolvable default.
Now, international lenders aren't just sitting idly by waiting for this to happen. They are fundamentally shifting their bankability demands. To protect themselves, syndicates are now demanding strict, comprehensive compliance representations, which means the borrower must prove that every single guarantee has full Chinese ODI approval. They're also requiring dynamic quarterly reporting on the parent's regulatory status back in China. And perhaps most importantly, they are writing aggressive new clauses where Chinese national security interventions or export control penalties instantly trigger mandatory prepayment events without any grace period whatsoever.
Finally, Section 6, Rebuilding Sponsor Support, the structural blueprint. Okay, here is your actionable structural blueprint to actually survive these 2026 rules. Step 1, absolutely refuse unlimited guarantees. You have to set hard liability caps. Step 2, insert strict sunset clauses tied to the commercial operation date, or COD, so parent liability drops to zero once the project is physically up and running. Step 3, you must ensure that your official ODI filings with Chinese regulators accurately cover the maximum conditional guarantee amounts, not just the initial cash equity. Because if you don't file those guarantee amounts, the guarantees might be deemed legally invalid in a Chinese court. And Step 4, you must aggressively negotiate PRC regulatory change clauses with your lenders.
And the absolutely crucial number to remember here is 180. That is the minimum number of days of grace period you must negotiate into your excusable clauses. Think about it. If Chinese regulators suddenly intervene, halting your project for national security or export controls, you desperately need a 180-day window to restructure the debt or find alternative guarantors before the international syndicate can pull the trigger on a devastating cross-border default.
The era of relying purely on offshore corporate shields is officially over. Guarantees are no longer just simple financial tools. They are highly monitored extensions of sovereign risk. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider the very next time you try to close a seemingly ironclad cross-border deal. Are you truly protected by your legal structures, or have you unwittingly become a regulatory target? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely be sure to review your sponsor support systems well before July 2026 arrives.